Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm here. Sorry about. Okay, my sound is on now. Sorry about that. Okay. Hey guys, it's Katie. Sorry about that first minute of no sound. And I am now having sound, so I hope you guys can hear me. Okay. So, you guys reached out to me last week on multiple platforms, lots and lots and lots of platforms. And you asked me to look into the story of this little boy named Myka. And you wanted me to, or not Myka, named Huxley. And you wanted me to figure out where he was. And you had a lot of concerns about him. And I thought, okay, we are going to look into this. And then I was like looking at it, and it looked really complicated because it involved an adoption. So I was like kind of reluctant. You know, there's this part of me as a creator that feels like not all creators should, like, we're not obligated to tell you guys everything. You know what I mean? Like, there's a level of privacy that you have or you want. Like, we as creators have the ability to share small pieces of our lives, and we get to filter out what it is and what we want you guys to know. And when things happen, we can also decide what it is that we're comfortable sharing with you. And so in this case, I was trying to weigh that sort of balance. Like, are they not saying something about Huxley? Which, here's the story. Myka and Myka Stauffer have built a platform on the adoption story of a little boy named Huxley who was adopted from China. The couple used a GoFundMe to help support or raise money in order to adopt him, and his entire adoption story from pre-adoption on to, you know, going to get him in China, to all the updates following the adoption, and all of the struggles and the joys that they've had. They have made a lot of money because they've monetized a lot of the videos about their son. Along the way, they shared, you know, the stories about raising 3 other children and then adding a 4th child. They also went on to have another child. And as I've been digging into this, there's a lot of red flags. And listen, I'm not here to be like, you know, we need to like burn these people at the stake, because that's like so not how I am. I'm going to try to remain objective, but I've put together a lot of clips, like a ton. And we're going to like sort through all of this and kind of walk through what happened and talk through this, because I know so many of you had concerns. So today it started with, I just want to tell you like where I came in. You guys flooded my inbox. You said, Katie, you need to look into this. This little boy has not been seen on social media forever. We don't know where he is. They made a ton of money like on his story, and now all of a sudden he has been scrubbed from their social media. They have not posted any new photos. They're deleting comments. They're not answering questions. And then you're also telling me, come on, Katie, you are an autism mama. Why can't you help us? Please help us. I know that you care about kiddos with autism. So that right there is what stuck with me. That's the part that got my heart. My son is level 1 autism, and I know all about the struggles, but I also know about all of the joys and all of the amazing aspects of this. And as I started digging into this, you're going to see what I found. But here is a clip from their video today where they discussed what happened and the painful decision that they came to make.
Sometimes there's unknowns and things that are not transparent on files and things like that. And once Huxley came home, there was a lot more special needs that we weren't aware of and that we were not told. So over the past few years, Huxley's been in numerous therapies to try to help him with all of his needs. And over the last year has been a more intense therapy that he's been in to try to help him as much as possible with his severe needs. And for us, it's been really hard hearing from the medical professionals a lot of their feedback and things that have been upsetting, really upsetting for us, because this is not what we've ever wanted to hear. We've never wanted to be in this position, and we've been trying to.
Okay, so So their claim is they adopted him. They say that the adoption agency was not completely transparent about his needs. Although I was looking through all of their adoption videos, and that doesn't appear to be the case because she videoed with him for quite some time. She knew that he had some brain abnormalities, including having what appeared to be either a tumor on his brain and a portion of his brain matter that had sort of disappeared due to what she said was a stroke that happened in utero. So they knew about all of this, but there appeared to be a lot of issues. And so they claim that what happened is they made the decision that they needed to give him up because they say the medical professionals told them that he needed a better fit for a house, like it was a dog or something.
Raw and real, but we haven't intentionally, day one, intentionally, 95% of the struggles we have never publicly aired, ever, with pure intent of respecting his privacy, not to give you a fake facade or to be lack of transparency, but to respect our son's privacy. And this is all that we're okay with sharing.
This particular part is what angered people, because now they say they're going to respect his privacy when they've literally exploited every inch of his story for monetary gain and for subscribers, for followers, for GoFundMes. They have made a habit of constantly updating and sharing every aspect of his life. And now they were asking people to respect their privacy, which was why people were so outraged. How is it that you can profit off of this, and then when something goes wrong, you don't tell us and you don't ask him, and you won't answer our questions? So she then goes on to talk about how he's been placed in a new home.
End of the struggles we have never publicly. We didn't know a lot of these unknowns, and when the agencies, multiple people have been allowing for Huxley to spend time with some different people to see and to make the perfect match and fit for his now new forever family. From the updates we've gotten from the agency and through the adoption agency, they were able to place him in what they felt was literally the perfect match. When we met, like Jimmy said earlier, when we got Hux, we didn't know a lot of these unknowns, and when agencies or adoption agencies have more pieces to the pie, or they have more pieces, it makes the matching process a little better or a healthier match.
Okay. So she claimed that one of the issues here was that, she didn't want to interfere on what was going on with his placement. And she said, she made it sound like they were doing some sort of testing the waters and, allowing her to try out a bunch of different options, like he was going to one size fits all it kind of thing with his, with families. Now, interestingly, someone that's in the know on Twitter posted this today. Sophie Ross said, "I'm extremely depressed reading about the influencer who raised funds to adopt a son and made this her brand, discovered he has special needs, secretly rehomed him, blocked people asking about him after her followers helped fund the adoption, and put out a video making herself a victim." And then Sophie went on to say, there's another one here. Let me find it. That I just got confirmation that Huxley's in a great foster home. Might be temporary or might turn permanent. But in case anyone's wondering where he is safe in the foster system and still in the United States. Myka saying his new mommy makes it sound very different from what it is. So she made it sound like, he had been placed in this home and he had been everything was great and they were just going to try on different families, when in reality it sounds like he was in a foster home. And with fostering, that if there are issues in fostering, people can give the child up, they can walk away from it, they can have a million different things happen here, right? And so it's not so much that he's trying out new homes, it's more so that it's fostering, according to Sophie Ross, who is I don't even know, she has a verified account, so she must be someone important. Okay, so then what I did was I was looking through some of her videos, and I was like, okay, well, what were the signs here? Like, were there warning signs? Like, what were her issues? So I found this video where she talked about, would she ever adopt? And in this video, she actually talks about how bringing the child home when you have a child that's not a baby is actually a lot different than it is if you have like a baby of your own, because the child ends up being like the same. They're an older age, they need different things, they're very clingy. But some of the red flags that she says that prevented them from doing domestic adoptions were, her reason for adoption was she just wanted to, and that she's never struggled with infertility, and she already had 3 children. And because of those risk factors, because she already had a large family, some agencies do not want to work with them because there's a high probability that the adoptions can fail because there are other children in the home that have to blend with this child, and it all has to work out smoothly. And you're bringing in a child that's going to be new to everyone, and it can disrupt the family, family dynamic. And so she said she could not adopt domestically. And then after a lot of research, she was only able to adopt in China because they were one of 2 countries that would allow her to adopt with having no infertility issues and already having 3 children, which are pretty big big red flags. And not only that, she was going to take on another child that had special needs. So here is what she's talking about.
That was something that I wanted to do. And when I talked to my husband, the first thing we talked about is foster to adopt. And for him, he felt that his heart wasn't quite ready for that because he didn't want a child to be taken away from him. So we kind of ruled that one out for that time period. And then we talked to a lot of social workers in our country, in the United States, and they were telling us if we adopted through the state, the youngest child we would get is 6 unless they had a severe medical need like a trach or a more complicated medical need that needed more interventions, or it was a sibling group. At least that's what we were told from a couple different social workers. So one of the biggest factors that James had when it came to adopting that he was very comfortable with, because our children were so young, we looked into different requirements. We talked to tons of people. I talked to Angela from this gathering nest. I talked to tons of friends. I talked to a lot of different people, different social workers and different people that worked at adoption agencies. And I said, this is how long we've been married. This is how many kids we have in our home, because we already had a larger family, 3 kids in our home. So there was some countries that we were already excluded from. And with all of that.
Okay. So there was already a lot of red flags, it sounds like, before they even went out. So admittedly, she has 3 children. She's never had any sort of infertility issues. And they're going to one of 2 countries that will allow her to adopt because of those factors. I'm guessing it's because of those factors there would be a higher probability of the adoption failing. And I would assume that where we're at today would be considered a failed adoption. So, there was another video where she actually talked about the first few days of her, when she actually adopted Huxley and they went to China, and how hard it was because of, his specific needs, and the fact that she couldn't identify whether or not it was trauma, whether or not it was some sort of issue with his development. She described the first few days.
That had adopted in the past. And at the end of the day, I feel like I wasn't prepared enough for what trauma truly looked like. And that's okay. That happens, sometimes you'll prepare for a natural birth and you'll get into the contractions and you've read tons of literature, and then you get to the hard stuff and it's your first baby and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I didn't prepare for it. And that's the same thing that happened to Jim and I. We just didn't truly prepare for what trauma looks like. And it is hard, it is messy, and it is so sad. I remember praying Am I strong enough to be his mama? Can I do this? Can I give him what he needs? And one of the hardest things about our first week in China was Huxley grieved so hard. And since on that gotcha day, Jimmy had to hold him because he was so strong and I couldn't physically hold him any longer. He started to look at Jimmy as his comfort person because he was strong, he was always holding him, and he started taking care of him. You know, from those first couple hours that we had him as our son in the hotel room, he initially took to Jimmy because Jimmy's obviously doing those things for him. And because of that, he completely rejected me on the most hardest level humanly possible.
So she admits that everything was really, really hard when they first met him. He had been apparently relatively attached to his caregiver in China. And obviously, you know, he was a toddler when they brought him home, and he also had special needs. And so he was struggling with, you know, some of that, leaving the people that he was used to, going to a new family he knew no one with. And then she's claiming that he rejected her and he wanted her husband instead. So that's, she was rejected as a mother. That can't feel good, obviously. And then there was some specific issues that people were concerned about that were brought up about him because of some of the things and the ways that he was treated. And on a day where she finally actually introduced him to people, this was what happened in the video. So she admits that he had one comfort item, and it was sucking his thumb, and they decided, because they didn't want their child to suck his thumb, because, you know, it might cause your teeth to be, you can get issues with your teeth, and, you know, it could require surgery. It could require surgery, mind you. I sucked my thumb and I never had to have surgery. Not every child that sucks their thumb has to have surgery. It doesn't always cause issues with thumb sucking, but so he rejects her, and then they take away his comfort. So then obviously people start getting through things on Twitter, and people are not happy. But one more video is, this was actually relatively recent, and it's of her talking about how difficult it is to raise a child on the spectrum. Okay, so admittedly, she goes through a bunch of signs with him, and she admits that because his receptive language is low, he has a lot of needs. Now, level 3 autism is the most severe form, and typically in order to be at a level 3, my son is a level 1, but to be a level 3, the child would have to be nonverbal as well as severely impaired in almost every single area in which they evaluate, and that would also include typically an intellectual disability. So it is definitely a lot, but the question a lot of people had was, if she already had this high needs child that she adopted from China, then she went on and got pregnant again and brought in a new baby, and then the baby comes in, and then fans believe lost interest in Huxley, or it got too hard. I have no idea. But then another video in which she talked about their journey, you know, she talked about in September of 2019 how hard it is to raise him and all of the challenges she has.
That God intended for Huxley to be mine 100%. And there's days where I'm like, God, am I strong enough? Am I capable of this? Am I good enough? Or am I giving him all that he needs? Like, am I worthy enough? Am I doing my best job? Like, I question days so hard, because being a mama with a kiddo on the spectrum, if you're a mama with a kiddo on the spectrum, you already get it. There are days when it's just hard, and there's so many paths and so many directions that you can go to help your kid. And I'm just like, am I doing the right thing? Am I going the right way? Am I being the best mama that I can? And this year has been so amazing to kind of affirm those questions in my head and let me know that, like, I am fighting the right fight. I am doing what is best for my kiddo. There's so many days that I'm just so grateful that I got the opportunity to get to be.
Okay, so she says she's like really glad to be a son. Now, somebody in chat said, Are they really level 3? They shouldn't actually be able to do some of those things. And I agree, actually, because all of the level 3 people, all of the level 3 children that I know have a very difficult time following any sort of commands and any sort of, they have a very difficult time at such a young age learning signs. He knew a lot of signs. He was still very young. I wonder if he was maybe, and I do know too, as an autism mother, that diagnoses done in the very early days can change, because children on the spectrum can definitely like improve. And so as you know, they grow and learn and take on new skills, you will sometimes see a child that was originally diagnosed level 3 become level 2, or whoever evaluated them didn't get it right, and so then they are level 1. So he, when I was watching him, could completely understand what she was saying to him, could follow his commands. And so I was like, is he really level 3? I really don't know. But I think what is happening on Twitter is that, you know, and here's another example of like the fact that he can follow instructions, which is what makes me question what level. He was like in that clip too, he was like a really happy, engaged child, and he was like doing things like she was asking him to do different signs, and he was like communicating with her. And like, obviously the one thing that they will tell you when you become an autism parent is if you know one child with autism, you know one child with autism, and every child with autism is a little bit different and has a little bit different stuff going on. So we can't like compare there, but you know, he looks to me he looked cute and normal, and like autism is definitely very challenging, but it doesn't mean that, you know, when things get tough you give up, and that is why fans are sort of upset. So I want to just show you some of the stuff that I'm seeing on Twitter related to their announcement. People are mad. Okay. So obviously, Sophie Ross, the last tweet I showed you, said, I just got confirmation that Huxley is in a great foster home, and he might temporarily or might turn permanent. And there, in case anyone's wondering if he's safe, he is, but he's in the foster care system. So she actually misled people. This is what Sophie Ross is saying. But then it was this stuff. You never say forever new home to a child. That's language for adopting pets. You make me sick. You should give language money. You should give the money back to your sponsors. And then a photo was shown of them taping his thumb with duct tape to prevent him from sucking his thumb, because you remember she didn't want him to suck his thumb because she felt like it might give him issues down the line where he would need surgery. And then also people started pointing out some of the tweets, some of the statements she had made on her Instagram, saying, Huxley, you have changed our lives for the better, and now that I know how incredible my life is with you in it, I couldn't imagine a day without you. And then, I love you, everything about this little boy. I wouldn't trade him for anything. Definitely insensitive words when you think about it. And when you look at, you know, she did so many videos about this, and I showed you just 5 videos. Her whole channel is videos about Huxley. Oh, so there was, you know, you're a disgrace, gonna give up your other kids if you can't handle them too. The audacity of you adopting a child and then giving him up, and now you're gonna pretend it never happened while still making a profit off that poor child. You don't deserve to have children. Would you have given away one of your biological kids if they had special needs? No, you wouldn't. You're a disgusting pig, and you should have your children taken away from you. Obviously, emotions are very high here. Myka Stauffer adopted a Chinese baby to fuel her white savior complex and grow her following, treated that baby differently to show she treats her biological children, and then after almost 3 years decided that she was done being a mother to that baby. I'm trying to look at this situation with a fair, unbiased mind, but I do not understand how someone could do this. This October, she would have had Huxley for 3 years. That's longer than she's had her youngest child. Imagine being one of the other children. You should be banned from ever adopting another baby. You're effing gross for what you did. Karma will bite you in the ass. I feel sorry for that poor baby effing trash. You should be ashamed taping his hands. You don't deserve children. So, you know, people are clearly outraged. And, you know, it is when I look at this objectively, and you guys, I don't want to drag her, because obviously in this situation, you know, if this family feels like they can't give the child the best home and do the right things for the child, then, you know, is it true that, you know, do you keep him in a home where they don't want him, or do you place him with someone that does want him? I think the red flags I see when I look through the story is that she already had 3 children and she didn't have fertility issues. And then she had another child. She had a child that she adopted that had a high level of special needs. I have a child with a high level of special needs. I am a mother of a child with autism. I also know that children like this are discarded because they're too tough and it's too much work. And these kids are abused at a higher rate because of their needs. And, you know, there were so many signs telling this woman that she probably should not have adopted 3 kids, no infertility issues, and her only reason for wanting to adopt was, I just wanted to do it. And then I couldn't do it in the domestic area. My husband didn't want to adopt an older child in the United States through the foster system. So we went to China because there was only 2 countries we could choose from because of the fact that we have 3 children and I have no fertility issues. And then they take the child, they raise money, they exploit this child's life by fueling their need for attention, a lot of people are saying, and their narcissism is the cued word I'm seeing a lot on Twitter. But I think it opens up a dialogue about, why are people adopting? They are from a Christian family, and I'm not saying anything against Christians, but there is this sort of population in the Christian world that really feels like God calls them to adopt a child because they feel like they can save someone, you know, they can save a child. And then they don't do it for the right reasons. They're not adopting the child because they can do it or manage it. And, you know, this was my other question, is she already had a child that had a lot of needs. So then why would you have another child? Jewel says her only reason for narcissism, or her only reason was narcissism for adopting him. Brittany says they have money and time to burn, and I'm working a full-time job and spent the whole day getting services on top of that. Her oldest daughter used to share custody with her ex, and it wouldn't surprise me if she could get full custody or something like that. They have like a big hole for themselves in many ways. People like them make me sick. My husband and I have been dealing with infertility for 5+ years. I'd love to adopt, but simply can't afford it. Holika says the thumb taping is disgusting. Minda Jane says he's better off with someone else, but this is just another layer of damage to him. Her following skyrocketed after announcing this adoption. So this is the part that bothers me. Like, her whole platform was built on this little boy. And I have a very mixed feeling about people that openly put their children with autism on camera, because in one respect, we want to normalize it, right? We don't want to feel alone as parents that have children on the spectrum, but we also don't want to exploit our children's disabilities and make our children's disabilities sort of a sideshow for sympathy or a means to, not putting their worst moments out on the cameras, not taping their meltdowns, not talking about their issues related to their intelligence. There's this whole human decency movement in the disability world that wants to look at individuals with disabilities as humans first with rights. And so there's a large population of adults who I value greatly, and it was actually a reason why I stopped writing about my son. Was I started speaking to adults with autism and with disabilities, and they were like, Katie, you need to respect his privacy. The whole world doesn't need to know his situation. The whole world doesn't need to know every in and out. And it was at that point when I realized, like, they're right. They are right. And so this became this trendy thing of her utilizing his disabilities for attention and for views. And she made tons and tons and tons of money. She has so many sponsorships. She's sponsored by Fabletics. And then during this time has gone on trips to Bali. She was posting photos about what I eat in a day while she's sitting in a bikini. She clickbaited Huxley from day one. And after 3 years, dumped him like trash. Disgusting. Can't putting adopted children on camera publicly a risk for adoption even after it's finalized? This is going to create insane amounts of abandonment issues that she even admitted he already had in her last update about him. My heart is breaking for him. I feel like he's wondering why. Here's what I will say is that my question is if you have a child with autism, you know how children with autism love routine and consistency, and they are very, very, very literal thinkers, and they process the world in a very black and white model. And so if you are making changes to them, it's very difficult for them to process those changes and sort of go with the flow. And it's hard for them to connect with people as it is because of their social deficits, which autism on its core is primarily a social deficit where they have struggles not only with literal and rigid thinking, but understanding the complexities of socialization. And so you have a child that's socialized to you, that's in a routine with you, and it got so hard that you gave that child up and you let him go, and now he has to create a whole new set of attachments. He has to create a whole new routine. He's probably going to have more meltdowns. And I think it's kind of awful, to be honest. It's kind of awful if you think about it in this way, of them basically saying, he has a new mommy and he's doing so well and everything is totally fine. And it can't be that easy with a child with autism. There's just absolutely no way. I rarely discuss my son, but I will say that my son it takes him a long time to warm up to people. Once he warms up, he does a really, really good job. Yes. Now some kids with autism they have no social boundaries, so they will love anyone no matter what. And then some children, and that's another aspect, is they don't have the proper social skills. So my son, when he was little, would literally hug anyone because he didn't know that you weren't supposed to hug people. But all of this is just really heartbreaking for Huxley. It's just hard for me to hear because I know that for me personally, I want to adopt more than having my own kids, and I just can't wrap my head around the mother being so irresponsible. Yeah, again, definitely a lot of red flags here. And then I thought that friends had been advised not to put their adopted children on video online for legal reasons. Seems like it would be more so with disabled children. Yeah, and that's why I struggle with fathering autism, because that child is in her teens and she has severe disabilities. And it's, to me, a question of exploitation when you put a child that can't consent, especially a teenager, with no understanding of what it is that people are seeing. And then, unfortunately, there's such a negative stigma still with children with disabilities that if you post a photo of a child with a disability, people can be so cruel. And that's why my husband and I no longer post photos of our son, because people are awful when we show photos of him. So if you look through if you look through all of my stuff, I used to write about him, and we don't write about him anymore. I do talk about him a little bit, but you don't see photos of him anymore. And I don't really tell you guys about what's going on in his life because it's really no one's business. But no one knows what it must have been like in their home for them to have to make the kind of decision they had to make. Those of us who actually watch Myka know she's a good person with a good heart. Now, that's another argument, is that, no one knows what he went through. But I think the question is if he would have been their biological child with those issues, would she have done the same thing? At least they admitted they could no longer cope and turned him over. They did the right thing. Living with an autistic child is hard and can stress even the most patient, loving of parents. That's true too. They have the resources to care for him and made money off the adoption content. Sorry, but I have zero sympathy. Absolutely. I think that everyone is so mad about isn't just the fact that they gave him up, but that they kept blocking all the comments and asked them politely about Hux. That's just weird. People on the internet are so freaking cruel. Children should be off limits, no exceptions. This breaks my heart, Katie. You are doing such a great job. You are a perfect person to comment on the top issue. Yeah, and I think they were blocking comments for months. And so, you guys, I can see both positions here. I can see that, she probably they went to a point where they probably just couldn't handle it anymore. But I think it's hard for me to have sympathy in a way, because when I'm looking through all of the videos, I'm seeing a woman that already had so many children that really didn't have business adopting another child, especially one with high needs, and trying to throw that child into a home and just expecting them to blend in, knowing it was really hard. And then because it's so hard, then she has another baby, and then it's like, bye, Huxley. It's frustrating. And I think as a parent of a child with autism, that breaks my heart. But at the other aspect of it is that now at least we can hope that someone that finds, he might end up living with or adopted by might be a better fit. How can you say someone is a good person when you have to judge them only by their actions? You don't know them in real life. This is a facade. Their actions of ditching him when life got hard show. Yeah, this is a tough topic, you guys. I mean, and I knew coming onto this channel and bringing this up was going to be really challenging, but I had so many of you in my comments telling me we had to talk about this. So I live around Texas State School and a resource center. One of the kids takes in kids if you give them up. And also I'm lucky there are so many resources out there that can help you with kids and adults. That's true. Crazy Azzy says, if I had donated to their GoFundMe account, I would be asking for money back. I would do everything to get it back. Can people ask for their money back? I mean, they kind of committed fraud, right? I don't know. They did the adoption, and he lived with them for almost 3 years. So I don't think at this point you could ask for the money back. I don't know. But I noticed that, they are hemorrhaging subscribers now on their channel. They have deleted every video off their family channel. And I don't know how... I don't know. I don't know that, I don't know if she'll rebound from this. I think of it this way, like Tati Westbrook, like a year ago, right? She accused James Charles of all that stuff, canceled him, and people got so angry when he finally showed the receipts, and then everyone was like, how dare you do this to someone over the competition of your vitamins? And a year later, she wasn't able to recover at all. Her channel lost subscribers. She was in the red every single month. She lost hundreds of thousands of views every single month. You know, it got to a point where she hasn't even put out new content in a month. So I think to a point you can sort of push through. But this to me is even more than just, you know, canceling James Charles. This is, I used my platform to adopt a child and I profited off of that extensively. I became this sort of advocate for special needs children, and then I let him go. CC says, I think they should step away from the public influencing and family videos. It will feel awful to watch them when we know that Hux is mixing. And this is part of the reason why I have a hard time with these family channels and these people that do marriage and family advice on Instagram. Who has the right really to give anybody, strangers, advice, right? Who of us has the right to give anyone advice about how to have your marriage, how to raise your children, what you should eat, what you should wear? Like, really, who has that right to give advice? And why do people, just because they have a platform, decide that they're the people that should be giving you advice about things? I always try to keep this platform very even keel and allow all of you to have a voice and to have a place to share your opinions. And I don't ever want to feel like I'm giving you any sort of advice. Amy says, they also complained how expensive he was. I wonder if that amount was more than he will lose each month from now on. This is another question I have, is that if they are self-employed, insurance for him would have been extremely expensive. Renee says, it's not fraud though. They did what they said the GoFundMe was for. It sucks though. Hit the thumbs up so Katie, to show Katie you support her and her channel. Well, thank you. Yeah. If you're new to my channel, make sure that you subscribe. And if you are not new, thank you for being here. They gave him up. I understand he had learning disabilities, but I'm so sorry for him. They had other kids too. And Dana says, I just watched the video and it sounds like something. Hopefully Huxley is in a better home now where we can get the proper attention and care. I hope that I'm doing this kindly. I don't want to drag her. I know this could not have been a easy decision for her. But when hindsight is 20/20, and I think the lesson here, you guys, and this is just me, this is me honestly being extremely just straight to the point, which is what my subscribers really like about me, is the lesson here is that if there's a million red flags, I went to therapy for years, and I remember my therapist told me, you have to know when you spot a red flag, and you have to know with the red flag if that means you should stop what you're doing. She had a lot of red flags telling her that she shouldn't have done this. She had a red flag telling her that she had no fertility issues. She had a red flag that she already had 3 children. She had a red flag that the domestic infant adoptions she said would not work with her. She had red flags that her husband didn't want to work with children that were older because he was afraid of having a child with high needs. And then she had a red flag of going to China, and because it was one of only two countries that would work with her. So really, the lesson here is you have to be able to identify if what you're doing is for the right reasons. If there's so many reasons and experts telling you that this probably isn't going to be a good choice and a good option, and they have data to prove to you why you shouldn't do this, which, I'm sure that's why these countries wouldn't work with her, is probably data that shows that if you adopt to a family that has a lot of children, that doesn't have fertility issues, that these adoptions will fail. And that's what happened here. So I feel like you really need to think about those things. And then I think we need to stop thinking about children as pets. We need to start thinking about adoption, especially international adoption. think you guys want to hear this, but a lot of human trafficking goes on in international adoption. And that's, my husband and I looked into international adoption for a very long time. And we ultimately made the choice not to, because a lot of the children that are in the orphanages are actually trafficked into the orphanages. They are not there for adoption. They are taken from families. They are left by families for hopes of just going to school, and then they are adopted out. There's just a lot of reasons why you should not adopt internationally, not to mention removing a child from every single thing that they know, their entire culture, and then expecting them to do well with you. Not to say that all international adoptions are bad. It's just that there's such an issue with international adoptions. And when we were looking at adoption, that was the number one thing the agency was telling us, was that there are so many problems with international adoptions. There is so much, there's countries that literally will not work with the United States because of the fact of so many of these adoptions failing. Russia and other European countries have completely shut off adoptions with the US because of failed adoptions. And it's, you know, there's plenty of children here that need love. But if you really have 3 children and you have no fertility issues and you really want to adopt, get a dog. Get a dog. Get a cat. Get a goldfish. But we shouldn't be looking to save things because we want to help somebody in another country. Like, yeah. There are so many kids that need a home. Can you imagine what kind of complex that would create with her other kids? They might just think they could be next. Poor Huxley. I just hate this for him. He deserved better. Yeah, that was the question on Twitter was, would you have done this if this was your biological child? Jewel says that Huxley deserves justice. I was adopted from China when I was 14 months old, and this is heartbreaking. I can't imagine what Huxley is going through. I am so sorry, Rebecca. I'm sure this hits home very much. And again, I wasn't trying to down all adoptions at all. Like, I know so many international adoptions are successful, but you know, there's this proverbial humongous elephant in the room when it comes to international adoptions that nobody wants to talk about. They're not giving up on him. They're doing their best to give him the best life possible. You don't know the entire story, and you're not the family. Nope, we don't. So again, we're seeing it from both sides. Okay, so you don't have to agree with me if you think that they did the right decision. And ultimately, this is the thing. I agree that if they can't handle it, he needs to be with another family. If they can't give him the attention and the affection and all of the help that he needs to be with someone who can. And it is heartbreaking that they gave him up, but I do hope that wherever he lands, he will find love and he will find a caregiver that won't give up on him when it's hard. If you have a child with autism, make sure you hug your kiddos tightly tonight. And just remember that it is hard every day, but it is so worth it. And the hard times make the good times so much better. And watching our children beat the odds and do things that people once told us were not ever possible, and then watching them smash that is literally the most rewarding thing that you will ever get if you have a child on the spectrum or have a child with a disability. So to all of you parents that are raising a child with a disability or on the spectrum, I see you. Don't give up. Even on the hard days, you'll get through it. Bye, guys.